All right, today we are diving into something, well, pretty wild. It's this bizarre numerical pattern that seems to connect the very first kings of France with the first words of the Bible. And let me tell you, this theory, it might just change how you think about history itself.
So let me just ask you this right up front. Is history just one random thing after another? Or could there be something else going on? You know, like a hidden design, a code running just underneath it all. Just keep that in the back of your mind as we go through this.
Okay, so our story kicks off right after the Roman Empire falls. I mean, chaos, right? But out of those ashes rises this dynasty that's going to build the foundation for pretty much all of modern Europe. We're talking about the Merovingians.
And look, these guys weren't small-time players. Not at all. Starting way back in the 5th century, they built this massive kingdom in what we now call France and Germany. Seriously, you can pretty much draw a straight line from them to the start of Western European history. They're a big deal.
But here's where things start to get weird. If you look at their list of kings, you spot this pattern. It's with the kings named Clothar. Okay, so Clothar I becomes king in 511. Fast forward exactly 73 years, and boom, Clothar II is on the throne. Then what happens next? You guessed it, another 73 years go by, and Clothar III becomes king. I mean, come on, that feels like clockwork.
73. That number just keeps popping up. It's so regular, it's almost uncanny. It really does feel less like chance and more like a heartbeat, a pulse running right through their history.
So what are we supposed to do with that? Is this just some bizarre historical fluke? A total 1 in a million shot? Or could that number, 73, be a key that unlocks something way bigger? Okay, to find out where that key comes from, we have to take a huge leap. I mean, a huge one. We're leaving 6th century France completely, and we're going all the way back to the very first verse of the Hebrew Bible.
Yep, this is it, the very first sentence of Genesis, in the original Hebrew. And according to the theory we're looking at today, the secret to that whole 73-year pattern, it's hidden right here, inside these 7 words.
So how do we get the secret out? We need a special kind of key, an ancient practice called Gematria. Now, it's actually pretty straightforward. In this system, every letter in the Hebrew alphabet also has a number value. So you can take any word or any sentence and figure out its total numerical value just by adding up the letters. Simple as that.
Let's actually see how it works with this verse. So if you apply Gematria, you get these numbers. The first word, in the beginning, comes out to 913. The next word, created, adds up to 203. You do that for all 7 words, and what's the grand total for the sentence about creation? It's 2701.
Okay, so 2701. What's the big deal with that number? Well, here's the kicker. It's the product of 2 prime numbers, 37 times 73. And there it is, our number, again.
The theory we're exploring actually calls these two the creation numbers. And think about it. They're not just pulled out of thin air. They are mathematically extracted from the one sentence in the Bible that's all about, well, creation itself.
Okay, let's just pause for a second. We've got this really strange pattern in the history of a kingdom, and we've got this key, this number, pulled from a sacred text. So, what happens when we put the key in the lock?
This is where it all clicks into place. That 73-year gap between the Clothar kings, it's not random. It is literally one of the 2 creation numbers we just found, pulled straight out of Genesis. And it doesn't even stop there. Oh no. You start looking at other key dates, and it gets even crazier. The year Clothar III dies, 673. The year another key king, Theodoric IV, dies, 737. You see it? The numbers 7 and 3, they're just everywhere.
Now, you'd think that would be enough to make you scratch your head, right? But the theory argues the whole design is way more sophisticated than that. It's not just one number repeating over and over. There's a second, more complex formula that's also being used.
So here's how this next part of the code works. Step 1, take our number, 73. Step 2, double it. That gives you 146. And for step 3, you add the other creation number, 37. So 146 plus 37 gives you a brand new interval, 183 years.
And what's so wild is how this new 183-year cycle gets used. It seems to line up 2 completely different lines of kings, the Chlodwigs and the Childeberts. But here's the crazy part, the twist. For one line of kings, the 183-year pattern marks the year they died,
But for the other line, it marks the year they came to power. The level of detail here, the precision, honestly, it's pretty mind-bending.
Which brings us to the really big and honestly the most provocative part of this whole idea. What does it actually mean if a kingdom's entire history seems to be following a mathematical blueprint?
Well, the theory we're explaining doesn't pull any punches. It basically says, look, this system is so intricate, so layered, this can't be a coincidence. It argues that what we're seeing is evidence of a highly developed method of chronological composition. In other words, someone composed this timeline. Okay, so let's just put all the pieces together one more time. First, you've got the creation numbers, 37 and 73, that come from the very first verse of the Bible. Second, the Merovingian king's timeline seems to be built almost obsessively around those exact numbers. And third, the structure isn't simple. It uses both a basic 73-year interval and a more complicated formula.
All of this leads to a pretty staggering conclusion. The theory is that the history of these kings isn't, well, history. Not in the way we think of it. It's not just a record of stuff that happened. It's what the source calls an artificially created, numerically harmonized past. Put simply, history wasn't just recorded, it was written, like a story.
And that, of course, leaves us with one last massive question to chew on. If a huge chunk of our history was deliberately composed, written to follow a hidden mathematical code, just who exactly was the composer?